All right, so now let's render our vortex splines. We're going to render these using a different method. We're going to render them as strands. So I'm just going to turn them on so that we can see them in the viewport. And maybe I'll just kind of zoom in so we can kind of get a feel for these. What we have is this sort of spiral that's coming out and wrapping up our beam like so. So what I'm going to do is, if we fire off a render, they will not show up because we have not specified on the Redshift object that we want to be rendering them as splines or hair or strands or anything like that. So it's not going to show up. Again, like before, we're going to need to have the make sure the Redshift object tag is on the object. If it's not, you can select from the Redshift menu and say add object parameters. And then we're going to go over to the strands section. And here, we can choose to render our object as strands. So let's just tick that on. And I'm not sure if it's going to actually pick up in the render, but it might, and it looks like it did. So you can now see that we are rendering these objects, we're rendering these splines as strands. Let's just jump into a closer camera view and kind of get a better view of just a couple of these splines. So let's go and switch to camera 2. I'm going to hit the lock button and come up here so that we can get a nice view of our splines like so. And then I'm going to switch to camera 2 down here in our IPR and fire off a render. That's looking good. I might actually switch the fixed scaling down to maybe 50%. Like so. And I'm just going to turn off my lightning mesh light and my beam mesh light. Now I'm doing this using the display flag, and that only really works if you have the expression that we created in the bonus lesson in the lighting chapter. If you don't have this expression, which may be by default, I'm just going to Control Shift and click on that on off switch right here. And so if you don't have that expression, you just want to make sure that whether these are being displayed or not, it doesn't matter. You want to make sure that this light on off switch is checked off. I'm just going to turn off my my lightning mesh light and my beam mesh light. Now I'm doing this using the display flag, but you just want to make sure that whether these are being displayed or not, it doesn't matter. You want to make sure that this light on off switch is checked off. All right, that's good. And then I think I'll also turn off the hair splines just so that we don't get them confused in this mix. And then I'm actually going to jump into the vortex splines and delete a couple of them. So I'm just going to hit the S key to get in my selection mode, make sure I've got primitive selection mode going on right here, this little four square diamondy looking thing. And I'm just going to grab a handful of them in the middle and hit the delete key. And no need to worry, we didn't actually delete anything. We actually have created a blast node by doing that. And the blast node has assigned a group that is deleting those primitives. But if we just turn that off, we get them back. You see that? So what we can also do with the blast node is actually invert that selection. So if we say delete non-selected, you can see that we can actually just see the objects that we wanted to focus on instead. So just kind of toggle that on and off. You can see what you got there. Might even just push in a little bit closer with this camera too so we can focus on these. And because the display flag is set here and the render flag is set here, if we click off a render, we can kind of just see just a handful of splines in our IPR.